In the quiet cul-de-sac of Willow Creek Estates, where manicured lawns whispered of suburban perfection, a single phone call shattered the afternoon calm. The woman on the line, her voice laced with feigned concern, described a suspicious individual, unloading boxes from a truck, her tone dripping with unspoken assumptions. The police arrived swiftly, their cruisers pulling up with lights flashing but sirens silent, as if the neighborhood itself demanded discretion. Standing on her porch, the caller, a self-appointed guardian of the community's standards, watched with a smug satisfaction, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She had seen the new arrival, a black woman with a confident stride, directing movers with quiet authority, and something about it had set her nerves on edge. As the officers approached the driveway, the woman in question turned slowly, her expression unreadable beneath the brim of a simple baseball cap. She didn't flinch at the sight of uniforms. Instead, she met their gaze with a steadiness that spoke of battles far beyond this pristine street. The caller leaned forward, eager for the vindication she craved, imagining the intruder being escorted away, restoring the order she so fiercely protected. But as the conversation unfolded in hushed tones, the new resident reached into her pocket, pulling out a small card that gleamed under the sun. The caller's eyes widened, her body stiffening like a statue caught in a sudden frost. What she saw wasn't just identification, it was a symbol of service, sacrifice, and unyielding honor. In that instant, the air thickened with the weight of her misjudgment, the realization crashing over her like a wave she couldn't outrun. How had she misread the situation so completely? The neighborhood, once her domain, now felt like a stage where her prejudices were laid bare. This wasn't just a moving day mishap. It was a collision of worlds where hidden biases met unbreakable resilience. And as the officer's demeanor shifted from suspicion to respect, the caller's frozen stance hinted at the deeper story brewing beneath the surface. A tale of racial injustice woven into the fabric of everyday life, ready to unravel. Aisha Thompson had always been a woman of quiet determination, her life a tapestry of discipline and duty forged in the fires of military service. For over 2 decades, she had served in the United States Army, rising through the ranks from a young enlistee to a respected lieutenant colonel. Her deployments had taken her to distant lands, where she led teams through arid deserts and dense jungles, coordinating logistics that saved lives and turned the tide in forgotten conflicts. The scars she carried were not just physical, a faint line across her shoulder from shrapnel, but emotional, reminders of comrades lost and the relentless grind of a world that demanded everything. Now, at 45, with her retirement papers freshly signed, Aisha sought solace in the ordinary. She had chosen Willow Creek Estates, a gated community in the suburbs of Atlanta, for its promise of peace, wide streets lined with oak trees, community pools shimmering under Georgia suns, and homes that spoke of stability she had long craved. The house she purchased was modest yet elegant, a 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch perfect for morning coffees and evening reflections. It represented more than bricks and mortar. It was her anchor after years of transient bases and temporary quarters. As the moving truck rumbled up the driveway on that fateful Saturday, Aisha felt a rare spark of excitement. Boxes filled with mementos, faded photos of her unit, a folded flag from her last ceremony, books on leadership and history, piled up in the garage. A few old friends from her service days had come to help, their laughter echoing as they carried furniture, a brief reprieve from the solitude she often embraced. Across the street lived Evelyn Hargrove, the unofficial queen of the HOA. At 62, Evelyn had made it her mission to enforce every bylaw with zealous precision, from grass heights to holiday decorations. Her own home was a model of conformity, its white picket fence a barrier against anything she deemed out of place. Evelyn's life had been one of privilege, insulated by generations of comfort in similar enclaves. She prided herself on knowing every resident's routine, her binoculars often trained on driveways from behind lace curtains. When she spotted the moving truck, her curiosity piqued. But as Aisha stepped out, her dark skin glowing in the sunlight, Evelyn's interest turned to unease. Assumptions flooded her mind unbidden, images shaped by years of subtle media narratives and whispered neighborhood gossip. Who was this woman? Why here in their community? Evelyn's pulse quickened, her fingers itching to dial the HOA hotline. She told herself it was about rules, about maintaining property values, but deep down, a darker current ran through her thoughts, one she would never admit aloud. As the day wore on, Aisha unpacked methodically, unaware of the watchful eyes, her military precision evident in every organized stack. The stage was set, curiosity building like storm clouds on the horizon, ready to unleash a torrent that would expose the fragile veneer of suburban harmony. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawns, Evelyn's vigilance intensified. From her living room window, she observed Aisha's every move with growing suspicion. The way Aisha directed her helpers, her posture straight and commanding, seemed out of sync with Evelyn's expectations of a typical newcomer. The friends assisting her were a diverse group, men and women of various backgrounds, their camaraderie evident in efficient teamwork. To Evelyn, however, it looked like something more sinister, a gathering that didn't belong in Willow Creek's polished world. Her mind raced through scenarios fueled by unspoken fears. Perhaps this was not a legitimate move, but an intrusion, a disruption to the community's carefully curated peace. She recalled news stories of undesirables infiltrating neighborhoods, eroding the values she held dear. The racial undertones of her thoughts lingered like a fog, clouding her judgment, making Aisha's presence feel like a threat rather than a simple transition. Evelyn first reached out to the HOA board via email, her message terse and accusatory. She questioned the approval process for the sale, hinting at potential violations without evidence. But as hours passed and no response came, her impatience grew. Aisha, meanwhile, continued her work, sweat beading on her brow as she arranged furniture in the living room. Memories flashed through her mind, nights in barracks, strategizing under starlit skies, the weight of responsibility that had defined her career. She had faced adversity before, subtle discriminations in promotions, questioning glances from superiors, the constant need to prove her worth twice over. Yet she had persevered, earning commendations for her leadership in high-stakes operations. This move was supposed to be her reward, a chance to heal from the toll of service. Little did she know, the injustices she thought left behind on foreign soil were echoing here, in the heart of America. By evening, Evelyn could no longer contain herself. Seeing Aisha step outside to retrieve a forgotten box from the truck, her silhouette against the dusk, Evelyn dialed 911. Her voice trembled slightly as she reported a suspicious person loitering, possibly breaking in. The dispatcher probed for details, but Evelyn's descriptions were vague, laced with implications she hoped would prompt swift action. As she hung up, a mix of triumph and anxiety settled over her. She stepped onto her porch, phone in hand, ready to point out the issue when authorities arrived. The emotional stakes mounted for Aisha, though she remained oblivious at first. Inside her new home, she paused to hang a photo of her deployment team, a reminder of bonds forged in fire. The sound of approaching sirens pierced the air, pulling her back to the present. Her heart sank, not from fear but from weary recognition. This wasn't her first encounter with unfounded suspicion. It was a pattern etched into her experiences as a black woman in uniform and out. The police cruisers pulled up, officers emerging with hands resting casually on their. The moment arrived with electric intensity, the officers standing firm in Aisha's driveway as Evelyn hovered nearby, her expression a mask of righteous indignation. Aisha, sensing the escalation, reached into her wallet with deliberate slowness, her fingers brushing against the laminated card that had been her shield in countless situations. She extended it toward the lead officer, the military ID catching the fading light. It bore her name, rank, and a photo from her active days, the insignia of the U.S. Army prominent alongside notations of her decorations. A bronze star for valor, commendations for meritorious service in combat zones. The officer's eyes scanned the document, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly from authority to deference. He nodded, handing it back with a murmur of acknowledgement that rippled through the group. Evelyn, straining to see, caught a glimpse of the card's details, the symbols of national service that clashed violently with her preconceptions. Her face drained of color, her body locking in place as if rooted to the spot. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a dawning horror. This wasn't the intruder she had imagined. This was a veteran, a hero whose sacrifices dwarfed Evelyn's petty concerns. The injustice she had perpetuated hung exposed, the racial undercurrents of her call now glaringly obvious in the harsh light of truth. The officers turned their attention to Evelyn, their questions now directed at her motives. She stammered silently, her frozen stance a testament to the shockwave of realization. Aisha stood tall, her gaze meeting Evelyn's for the first time, a quiet power emanating from her that needed no words to convey the depth of the wound inflicted. The climax peaked in that silent exchange, the tension releasing like a thunderclap, leaving behind the echoes of a confrontation that transcended the immediate scene. Evelyn's world tilted, her biases confronted head-on by the undeniable evidence of Aisha's worth. With the revelation hanging in the air, the officers wrapped up their inquiry swiftly. They apologized to Aisha for the disturbance, their tones laced with genuine respect as they learned more about her service record in brief exchanges. The cruisers departed as quietly as they had arrived, leaving the street to reclaim its suburban serenity. Evelyn retreated to her home without a word, her frozen demeanor cracking into a flurry of internal turmoil. Inside, she paced her spotless kitchen, the weight of her actions settling like lead. Whispers spread through the neighborhood that night, texts and calls exchanging details of the incident, painting Evelyn as the instigator of an unwarranted drama. By morning, the HOA board had received multiple complaints, not about Aisha, but about Evelyn's overreach, her role as enforcer now under scrutiny. Aisha, though shaken, channeled her military discipline into moving forward. She finished unpacking, transforming the house into a haven with touches of her past, medals displayed modestly on a shelf, books on African American history lining the walls. Her friends stayed late, their presence a buffer against the isolation that threatened to creep in. In the days that followed, neighbors approached her cautiously, some with apologies veiled as welcomes, others with genuine curiosity about her background. Aisha engaged them with grace, sharing snippets of her journeys without bitterness, turning the incident into opportunities for connection. The community began to shift, subtle changes emerging, invitations to barbecues, discussions at meetings about inclusivity. Evelyn, facing backlash, stepped back from her HOA duties, her influence waning as reflections on her behavior forced uncomfortable self-examination. The broader impact rippled outward, the story becoming a quiet legend in Willow Creek, a cautionary tale against snap